Jream, Jiu-Jitsu Rules Everything Around Me podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to Jream Podcast, Jiu-Jitsu Rules Everything Around Me. I'm here with Dom. He is a hypnotist. He does it for sports athletes. Welcome, Dom.
What up, my man? How you doing?
So we've had a couple conversations, and one of the most interesting things is you are a real life hypnotist, not one that plays it on TV. You are a hypnotist.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Not like I don't do the part of what most people assume. Yeah, exactly. The chicken dance and all that. Right. Nothing against that. That's just when I got into the field, that wasn't really the route I wanted to go. All that stuff is real. As a matter of fact, the way I believed in hypnosis, because I'm just like everybody else, where you see some guy on YouTube or Instagram, whatever, do this thing, and then you're like, there's no way that could ever happen. Or you see him making people do some just outlandish things. And then, so I always thought it was fake or people were playing along. And then when I moved to Vegas, me and my girl, we went to a hypnotist show, the first one ever. And then this is before, obviously, I was a hypnotist, but I'm watching these people on stage, and I can clearly tell that they're not acting, they're not being paid. Like, these people are really under this guy, what seemed to be under his control. Right. So ever since that day, I was a believer. And then, yeah, the rest is history.
The question would be, are there people that are unable to be hypnotized?
No. So the whole thing with hypnosis is all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So when people, so here's why people think that people can't be hypnotized, is because they associate hypnosis with stage hypnosis, which is where you see the guy making people do crazy things, right? Now, they say only about 20% of the population can get to that level of hypnosis where you'll basically do anything that you're told. So that's about 1 out of 5 people, but the other 4 out of 5 can do hypnosis. It's just that they don't get to that level. So what I mean by all hypnosis is self-hypnosis is that in order for somebody to do hypnosis, they're basically doing it themselves. It's just that you have somebody guiding you along the process to make it easier. So every single one of us goes in and out of hypnotic states all day, every day. So if you ever been driving before, and you get a thought in your mind, or maybe you're listening to something, and then all of a sudden you kind of snap out of it and you realize, holy shit, who was driving for the past 10-15 minutes.
Right.
Well, that is a form of hypnosis. You're essentially in a trance, and your subconscious mind is controlling your body and making sure that you get to where you need to go safely. Same thing with if you're ever at the gym and all of a sudden you kind of just, you get stuck on something and you're starting to daydream and then you snap out of it. That is a form of hypnosis. So to answer your question, everybody can do hypnosis. Even when I first got into doing it, they said, yeah, the only people that can't do hypnosis are people who have like autism or cerebral palsy and all that. And the funny thing is, I've actually worked with somebody who has autism, who's an MMA fighter, Serena Southpaw, and she is able to do it perfectly fine. And then I worked with this other guy who's a purple belt or brown belt in jiu-jitsu and judo, Matt Marcinek, and he has cerebral palsy. And he did just fine. So that isn't actually true. I guess It depends on the level of how bad it is. But yeah, everybody can do hypnosis.
Yeah, I can remember back probably about 7th grade. I haven't been able to do it since, but I used to be able to stare at a clock in a particular way and start thinking of something, and then the class bell would ring. I would have had almost like an awake dream, And then of course my parents, then blame my parents, but then of course I got put on Adderall, and that So it's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just staring at clocks and thinking about stuff just so I can pass the time. I'm like, okay, Adderall. And then I was like, then I was super focused, but I didn't eat anything. So
right.
What makes the mind able to take in hypnosis, able to be not controlled, but convinced almost that, so like my mother went to hypnosis for cockroaches, her fear of cockroaches.
Right.
And she said it worked for a while, and it kind of came back, and she went back again, and it does make a difference. She's not like before she was screaming on
Mm-hmm.
cockroaches. And we live in South Carolina. We have palmetto bugs, so they're like cockroaches that are like this big.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're not any different. They're just big versions of
Bigger.
cockroaches. Yeah, and so she did that, and she swears by it. But how is the brain able to be convinced of things that you're not afraid of cockroaches, or you're going to win this championship, or you're going to stop smoking?
Yeah. So I actually, for when it comes to like phobias and stuff like that, I don't really use hypnosis. I'll use an NLP technique. So
Okay.
when it comes to phobias, typically what it is somebody experienced some event in the past that was a traumatic experience, basically like PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
where every time they remember that experience, they remember it very vividly, and so it will cause them to feel those emotions, which will cause them fear or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So typically, what it is when somebody thinks of a cockroach or spiders or whatever, they'll get like a really big image that pops into their screen. Their screen, I mean by like their mind, right? Their screen of what they can see, and the image is very vivid, it's very clear, it's colorful, and it's very lifelike. So it's very simple. All you have to do is go back to figure out where this event started, do what's called disassociation, which basically means that so think of it like, so disassociation is seeing something disassociated, like in the third person view, so seeing yourself in a picture.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it like this: if you and I were sitting down, we're watching a movie, and in the movie, there's a guy sitting on the couch, and he's watching the scariest movie ever. So we're watching a movie about a guy watching the scariest movie of all time. Well, that movie is not going to be very scary, right?
Right.
Now you take that movie and you put it on our screen, and now we're watching the actual scariest movie of all time. It's going to be a lot scarier. Then
Right.
you take that screen and you blow it up like in like a real theater. It's going to be even more intense, right? Because
Right.
it's big, the sounds, everything. And then if that exact scene of the scary movie is happening to us in real life, then we're freaking out, right?
Right.
So one thing we have to do is disassociate. So essentially we have to get somebody to see themselves, see the guy watching the movie. So we see the person looking at the cockroach, we see the person looking at the spider, whatever. That'll immediately start to take some of those feelings away. And then what you do is you don't necessarily delete the memory, but you go back and you just kind of do like it's like a wash, rinse, and repeat, where you go
Mm-hmm.
through, you change the modalities, which is the color, the speed, all that of the picture, to where eventually you run it through so many times where people just, when they think about spiders or whatever, instead of getting that picture that just pops up in their screen, they'll just get a disassociated picture, and then the feelings just don't bother them anymore.
Is this similar to like EMDR type? So
I've heard of the MDR. I still don't know exactly. I never really got into like how it works and all that.
all
But
right.
is that the one where they do like fingers in your face and all that?
So
Or
it's like one hand's buzzing. So they're buzzing on dip. So if I'm holding a buzzer, I hear a noise in this headphone, and then nothing in my hand, and then a buzzer in this hand. And it just keeps going on and off. So like there's two buzzers, and then so it's like kind of like counteracting. I don't. So it's out of
yeah,
rhythm.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I've heard that it works.
Right. I've
I
saw my
never.
wife. So I haven't been able to do it. Like I haven't been able to
Mhm.
get there, but I've seen my wife do the EMDR, and she's been able to view herself viewing something else. When they use that
Gotcha.
same kind of, well, now you're in a movie theater, now you're in the parking lot, now you're like,
Yeah.
so they have to like,
Disassociation. Yeah.
right. So it's that same
Mhm.
kind of thing that you're talking about, where they see themselves looking at themselves at 13. So there's like a 13-year-old self with this emotions and this feelings, and they can, I mean, I haven't been able to get to that point, but I've seen her get to it, and which
Mhm.
she's not one of those people that are going to believe anything. So when I see her
Yeah.
do it, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is something's going on in the brain that allows this to happen.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on drugs that kind of get you the same kind of, almost like hallucinogenics,
Uh-huh.
hallucinogenics. Like I did a little bit of research on mushrooms and how people used to use mushrooms for actual medicinal purposes. And then basically Leary came out and really kind of stopped it all. But hallucinogenics such as ketamine or different things where they see things that are happening, and I've heard of therapies being done like this. How does hypnosis? Is it a release of some kind of drug in our head that allows us to go through that mental process, or is it, what I'm asking basically is the two alongside each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done mushrooms a bunch of times, and I know what people are talking about, like where you go and this is my experience. Like, you do the mushrooms, you get the stomach ache, and then you start laughing, and then you start hallucinating, and then there comes a point towards the end of the mushroom trip where you sort of start to come down, and at that point, at least from my experience, and like this is like every time I've ever done it, you start to you start to go and look at yourself from like an outside perspective and look at like what you're doing with your life. And it makes you really look at everything that you're doing wrong. And so you usually kind of analyze yourself from a different point of view, which is great, because then you can, you get that perspective like, hey, how are other people seeing me? Oh my God, this is where I need to get better at, et cetera, et cetera. So
I'm listening. I'm just pulling something up just so I have it, because I won't know the name, but this will fit right into what you're saying. So, so I got to go through my Audible books. So there was an Audible book that was about, let's just say, I don't know. Anyways, there's an Audible book about mushrooms. So this guy climbs into a tree, and it's storming and it's raining, and he's on his first time ever on mushrooms. This guy becomes basically a Harvard professor at some point. And he has stuttered every single day of his life, right? So he's stuttering. He can't even go up to girls. He can't do anything. He says he went to the tree and he was freaking out that he was going to fall off the tree. And then at some point he goes, if I'm going to die or if I'm going to survive, what do I change? He said, stop stuttering now. He told himself that. And he had only stuttered one time in 30 years afterwards. So it's almost like he entered his own mind, knew what he wanted to fix, and was able to give himself something that sounds like hypnosis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he gave his subconscious mind a command, probably without realizing that he did it. And the subconscious mind, and this is just a guess, because it was in that state of consciousness where when you're under the influence of shrooms, you're slowing down your brainwave cycles, so therefore the suggestion will stick more. So basically with hypnosis, the reason why it works and how it works is so when we're conscious, right, we're awake, we're talking right now, we're taking in millions of bits of information every second. So all the colors, all the shapes, all the sizes, all the sounds, everything. So your brainwave cycles are going like this, right? And we're doing that with our conscious mind. So what hypnosis does is it will allow you to slow those brainwave cycles down, okay? So that you could tap in to the subconscious mind to give it suggestions. So part of why, going into a trance, why you start to feel that sort of shift in your body where everything slows down is because you have a focal point. Instead of looking around at all this stuff or taking in all this information, now you're focused on one point, which will slow those brainwave cycles down. So there's beta, alpha, theta, delta. Those are the different levels of consciousness. So right now we're in beta, we're just talking, whatever. As soon as you start to do certain things, again, staring at a point, that starts to drop you down to theta. And then by using hypnosis, and you can even use self-hypnosis, it'll put you down into that state of theta, which is where permanent change can be made using hypnosis. So theta, to give you an idea of what it feels like, is like, have you ever been ready to go to bed and then you're awake, and then all of a sudden you wake up? So you think you thought you were awake, but you fell asleep, but then you woke up. You're like, wait a minute, did I fall asleep, or did I just blink? So that moment in time, that's when you're in theta. So it's right before you go into delta, which is completely unconscious, you're just asleep. So if you can get somebody right into that state, that's when their conscious mind is completely just calmed down, which allows the subconscious mind to open up to suggestion. So our conscious mind is only 5% of our brain power. That's our logical mind. That's what we do things with. So we see with, hear with, etc. Our subconscious mind is the other 95%. The subconscious runs everything. So the reason why you don't have to think about your heart beating right now, you don't have to think about your lungs breathing air in and out, you don't have to think about your liver, your kidneys, your intestines, because the subconscious mind is doing all that for you. So the subconscious mind, its highest primary objective is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. So what will happen is, for example, with stuttering, stuttering develops because somebody experiences an event that causes them so much fear that their subconscious mind holds on to that event, and it causes them to have that stutter when they come across similar situations, right? So a lot of stutters will develop, like a kid gets up in front of class to read, everybody laughs at him. It's such a traumatic event that now they develop a stutter, because every time, when they think about speaking, it, without them realizing, it brings them back to that state where, oh yeah, I remember that one time I tried to speak up in front of class and everybody made fun of me and how that felt. So then it'll cause them to stutter. I have one guy I'm actually working with right now with stuttering. It's funny you mentioned that. And we found out that his started from when he was like 2 years old, and his mom yelled at him, not trying to, make him obviously get a stutter, but he was so afraid in that moment that's when it caused him to stutter, and he'd been stuttering his whole life. So, so to answer, I can't remember what your question was, but
no, this is great. Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. So going back to the whole shrooms things, again, I haven't done like a whole lot of research into it. I'm just guessing what I would think from an outside perspective is that you're in that sort of you're in that state of consciousness where you're highly suggestible. So when you do the shrooms, you look at yourself from an outside perspective, and you think of all the things you want to change about your life, and then that's when people feel like they'll make change, right? As far as like ketamine and acid, honestly, I'm scared to do all that stuff. Yeah. So I don't like to mess with it. I haven't done shrooms in 3-4 years, but not to say I wouldn't do it again, but I just haven't really thought about doing it. But the whole man-made drug, I'm so scared of anything that's made by man, because I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I actually had a buddy of mine, he died of a GHB overdose. He was he was into bodybuilding, and a lot of bodybuilders, they take GHB because they I guess, if I've never done it, but I guess if you fight the feeling of, GHB is a date rape drug, right? So if you fight the feeling of going to sleep and you stay awake, you feel like you're drunk, but it's just, you only took like a very small amount of liquid. So rather than drinking a bunch of alcohol to get drunk, these guys will take GHB so they get the same feeling. Well, he ended up taking too much and he died. So I'm like super anti any man-made stuff. But so yeah, that's my perspective on that, and how I could see that that's a benefit. It gets people to recognize, like, okay, what bullshit am I doing right now? What do I need to change? Because that's been my experience. Doing the shrooms, at the end of it, you're coming down and you start to have a realization of like all the areas you need to change. So
right. Yeah, I think that things reach out to me. So I'm dealing with a back issue. So I'm looking into, because I had the surgery. The surgery was successful. They say it's successful. Does it feel successful? In certain ways. In other ways, I'm still in a lot of pain, or my legs are still weak, and so like I'm constantly reminded about it. And I also have OCD. So put my OCD mind into a pain mode, something that already people, if something hurts, you focus on the thing that hurts a lot, because you're constantly being, your attention is constantly there. So I was looking at, the book is called Change Your Mind or something like that. It was How to Change Your Mind. And they were talking about the mushrooms and different things, because realistically, I want to get in my own head at some point, and I want to not think about my back. If it hurts, fine. But if it's just there, I want to stop that constant, almost like a dog biting its own leg. It's like, or licking its own wound. I feel like I'm constantly doing that. And the same thing, like my wife has a an arrhythmia. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're not sure if that's subconscious or if that's just a medical condition. You know, there's so many things out there
Mm-hmm.
where we go see doctors and the doctors give us, this is how it works. And it doesn't work. You know, it's like,
Right. They give
but
you all the pills and everything, and
yeah,
nothing works. Spend
you're,
20 grand on surgery and nothing works.
yeah. And so yeah, exactly. So you're going through all the medical stuff and you feel better. I feel better than I did. And there was obvious problems, but it's like, there has to be something in my brain because other people, they come out of the surgery, their backs look just like mine, right? So, yep, 100% looks good, but they don't have the pain.
Mm-hmm.
It leaves them entirely. Whereas my mind, I'm focused on, I'm like, am I getting better? Am I getting better? Am I getting better? So how would you approach somebody with an injury or a palpitation or something where it's a real medical condition, but the brain may be taking more control of it than it should?
Yeah. I think we talked about it before on Instagram, and I think I told you, with pain management when it comes to hypnosis, it's a toss up, because if it's something that's really causing you physical pain, then hypnosis, you don't want to do hypnosis or get anybody to forget about it, because maybe they really do need to attack that area and fix it and figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want somebody to go out and injure themselves. But I have worked with people before who have like sciatica pain, things like that. Go to the doctor, nothing works. We'll do some hypnosis, and literally, guys go from being able to bend over like 2 inches to literally bending all the way over and touching the ground within, an hour of doing it. So a lot of times pain will manifest from having like conflict and negative emotions and things that are built up over your past, because when we have a negative experience, we also have physical trauma in our body that's tied to that negative experience. So when you can release a lot of those negative experiences, the trauma in the body also releases as well. So I've never worked with anybody with like heart stuff or anything like that, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say is, when it comes to things like blood pressure, high blood pressure, a lot of that stuff, a lot of it is in the mind, because what essentially what's happening is people have so much stuff that's built up from the past, so many unresolved conflicts, trauma, etc. And then what they're doing is, not only are they living in the past, everything that happened to them, but based off the past, they're projecting similar situations to them happening in the future. So the subconscious mind, it doesn't know the difference between what's actually happening in real life and what's the pictures that are in your mind. So when you've been, you've had, let's say somebody has financial problems their whole life, and they're thinking about, oh my God, that one time I went bankrupt, my credit cards, my this, my that. And then they start projecting that out in the future. Oh no, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And they're starting to get images in their mind. Well, their subconscious mind thinks that's actually happening. Well, if you're putting yourself in a flight or fight situation, what's going to happen? Your heart's going to be beating, your adrenaline's going to be spiking, cortisol's going to be pumping. So when you can release all the trauma from the past, and people, you can reprogram their mind so that when they project things out into the future, instead of them being traumatic and negative experiences, they're positive and everything works out and they see everything go okay. Then all of a sudden their blood pressure starts to drop and it just goes back to normal. But when you go to the doctor, they're just going to be like, oh, your blood pressure is whatever. Okay, here's lisinopril, here's the atenolol, and just here you go. And then they find out, oh shit, 5 years later, now my liver's messed up because I've been taking the lisinopril and this and that and whatever. So yeah, is your back hurting right now?
Yeah. I don't think there's ever a moment that I'm not in something.
Yeah. So like I said, with pain, the reason why I don't do it is because I can never guarantee like, okay, this is going to work for you. Right. So I'll run you through a quick technique and we'll just see what happens. So essentially what I'm going to have you do is you're going to point to where you feel the pain, and then you're going to use your hands and you're going to imagine that you're taking all of, you'll see here in a second, but I'm going to ask you there's going to be a color associated with that. You're going to imagine you're taking that color and you're placing it out in front of you. Okay. It's going to be spinning in a certain direction. We're going to reverse the spin, and I'm going to have you make it really, really big, really, really big. You're going to place the feelings of being healed in that, the color, whatever it is. And then you're going to imagine slamming it back into your back. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm going to remove the pain
With your
from my back.
imagination, with your hands. Yep. There's going to be a color, and you're just going to go like this, and you're going to keep getting it. And then it's either going to stay the same or it's going to change. We're going to reverse. It's going to be spinning in a certain direction. We're going to reverse it. And then you're going to make it bigger, like literally with your hands, just make it bigger and bigger and bigger until it takes on a life of its own. And then you're going to slam it back into your back. Okay. So
and eyes open?
Closed. Okay. So when my girl was pregnant, she would get acid reflux. I would do this, boom, gone. She was having, she would feel like she was going to throw up and have like these weird sensations. We would do. I remember one time we were driving home from back home, and I'm driving in the car. She's sitting in the passenger seat. She's like, my stomach hurts. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, close your eyes. Point to where you feel it. Blah, blah, blah. And literally, as I'm driving, got rid of her stomach ache within like 2-3 minutes. So it works. It's just that if it's something that's like in there internally, like something's tore, it's not going to work. But if it's something that has to do with like your nerves and stuff like that, it'll work. So go ahead and close your eyes and point to where you feel the pain. Okay, now there's going to be a color associated with the pain. What's the color? First impression.
Green.
Green, perfect. So I want you to reach in with your hands, pull all that green out, put it out in front of you, and make sure you get all that shit, because sometimes they like to hide, so get it all out. And keep going and let me know when you have it all out. Just keep going until you get it all.
Okay.
All right, now did it change colors or did it stay the same?
Between green and blue.
All right, so did it change or did it stay?
Green.
Green. All right, and now you're going to notice it's spinning in a certain direction. Which direction is it spinning? First impression.
Clockwise.
Clockwise, perfect. I want you to reach out both hands. I want you to reorient it so it's spinning counterclockwise. So reorient it, perfect. And then I want you to spin it faster and faster. Make that green bigger and bigger so it's taking on a life of its own. And I want you to place the feelings of being totally healed in that green. And once you know you have it, I want you to slam that green ball of energy back into your back. Spin it faster and faster until it takes on a life of its own. And when you know you've got it, slam that sucker right into the back. Notice the change, notice the shifts. Just allow any changes to be made at the unconscious level. And only when the changes have been made, only then when it has been made, only then can you open your eyes. All right. What'd you have for breakfast today?
Haven't eaten.
All right. So how does your back feel now compared to 3 minutes ago?
Definitely there's a I'm not even lying. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, and I feel like this is not going to be believed.
Uh-huh.
I can feel the weakness of my foot, but the pain in my back that was there is not there.
Oh, it's gone completely.
Yeah. I mean, I feel weak, but it's the exact point of pain that I had that I was thinking of went away.
Yep. Crazy, right?
Yeah. Listen, and this is for anybody that's going to watch this and they're going to think, well, he's just doing this for the hell of it, or he
paid him to do it, or he's playing along.
Like, do I feel healed? No, I can feel the weakness, but the pain went from a 7 to maybe a 1. Like, where I noticed that there should be pain. Like, so I think my biggest thing I'm dealing with. Wait,
there should be pain, but what the hell?
Right, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm focusing on it a little bit, because I'm bringing my mind to like, come on, where is it? And that maybe brings a little bit of like anybody, if you sit in a chair, you're not totally comfortable all the time.
Right.
So I think that's the only thing, but 100% that there's a huge difference.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
I forgot to say was what's your pain level at now? So we could, but you said it yourself. It was like at a 7 and it went down to a 1.
That's insane.
Yeah, man, your mind is powerful, man.
So who's driving our brain? If this is a big thing, you know who Eckhart Tolle is?
Yeah, I feel like I've read a book or a couple books or something. I can't. What book has he written?
So I couldn't tell you. Like, there's so many audibles that, so I don't ever look at the cover anymore.
I feel like,
Um,
yeah, I know I want to say I've read or listened to something he's put out before.
he was on Oprah's like master class or something like that when I guess she was done with the show, and she invited him
Uh-huh.
out in their like backyard. That's what it looks like. They're like sitting in the backyard, and he was saying all the negative things that had happened to him in life, or the different stuff, or the intrusive thoughts that he
Mhm.
had, and he wanted to become a monk. And he went through. And then he decided he didn't want to become a monk. But if you're answering yourself, so all the time we're understanding that we're answering our own questions. So somebody else is watching and thinking about the things that we're taking in, right? So that would be
Mhm.
our likely our subconscious. And the basic thing he said was that you are not your thoughts,
Mhm.
because you are the one reading your own thoughts. So if you have a thought, you're then identifying the thought. So that made me think, well, who's in control of our bodies right now? Is it just our experiences? Is it our subconscious? What is making us have these ideas, or have these maybe in thoughts, or even uh, drive? Like I want to walk over there. Who made me think of that? Myself, or did I take in an idea and move forward through that?
Yeah, so your subconscious runs everything. So when the subconscious needs something, it'll communicate with the conscious mind what it needs, and then with the conscious mind, you'll do the act of what you need to get whatever it is that you want. So remember, the subconscious mind, its number one objective is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. So when it feels hungry, it sends a message to your conscious mind, say, "Hey, we're hungry." Then you get a conscious thought like, "Hey, I'm hungry. I'm going to go cook some chicken," and then you go over there and you cook the chicken. So your subconscious mind it's again, its number one objective is to keep you alive and to keep you safe. And then what it does is it controls your life based off of past experiences, because again, it thinks, and believe it or not, bad things that happen to you, your subconscious mind will hold on to those things, and it'll constantly remind you of those things. And when it does that, it's actually hurting you, because you're reminded of, if somebody was raped when they were younger. Well, if they think about being raped every single day, they're literally reliving that experience every single day. So they'll have the same physical sensations of being raped. So again, all the adrenaline, the cortisol, everything gets, all the chemicals, the bad chemicals get released, which poisons their body. So that's why people will have all these problems: high blood pressure, cancer, heart attack, stroke. It's because on a daily basis, they're just constantly pumping that stuff out. So, but again, the subconscious, it doesn't realize that that's happening. It just thinks, we don't want to be raped. We don't want to be raped. So keep reminding us of being raped so that we don't do it. But in
Right.
turn, it's also sabotaging you. So what I do with people is, when we get rid of trauma, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, we have to negotiate with the subconscious to make it realize, oh, actually, by continuing to do this, reminding myself of rape or whatever, being broke or whatever, it's actually hurting me. So what I need to do is I need to go back, remember all the positive things I could take from that, which, believe it or not, like being raped, there's a lot of positives that can come from that if you can look at it from a different perspective. Number one, I can just tell you off the top of my head, that person survived. So to be able to survive rape, I mean, dude, if I got raped, I
Right.
mean, that's some heavy shit. Like,
Right.
people don't kill themselves. So the fact that that person can go 20 years after they've been raped and they can still live and they can still function in society, that shows that they're actually have a lot of strength within themselves, right?
Right.
And then it shows them how they need to treat people, et cetera. So when you could go back and reframe how people look at things, it changes what that means to them. So then basically their subconscious goes, oh, okay. Here's another thing with the subconscious mind is, it's always trying to learn things. It's always trying to learn, always trying to learn, always trying to learn. So when certain experiences happen to us and we don't take the positive learnings from it, what it'll do is, like, have you ever been driving before and you're having a great day, you're in a good mood, the music's playing, you're feeling, you're going to work, whatever, you're excited, and then all of a sudden a memory from 20 years ago pops up in your head and completely changes your mood?
Yeah.
So what that is your subconscious mind is communicating with you and going, hey, Malachi, remember when this happened when you were in high school? We need to resolve this. You still haven't resolved this. So what are we going to do about this? And it'll bring back all the physical feelings. And typically what we'll do, because we're not taught how to deal with it, is we'll just compartmentalize it. We'll try to think of something else. We'll change our mind. We'll distract ourselves. Well, just because you do that event goes away for the moment, but it's not gone forever. So that's why it'll go, you'll put it in your back pocket, and then a week later it pops up again. And people just have all these unresolved experiences from the past that their subconscious trying to go, hey, what can we learn? What can we learn? So when you go back, you take the positive learnings, you basically put that at rest. So people can think back like, oh yeah, I was raped, I was molested. I've worked with a lot of people who've been molested, guys and girls. And they go, oh yeah, I was molested, but I don't really care anymore. And then the physical feelings don't come into their body. So.
Yeah, I think that's, to come into something where you say, I take a positive from this. I was just waiting for you to tell me like, okay, what's positive? And it's like, yeah, 100%. I don't know if I could function as a human being because I have not been raped, but I assume it would be awful. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably on my list of top 3 things I don't want to have happen. And it happens to women so much, it's at such a high rate that you find out that there's a lot of people that that have had it happen to them once, twice throughout their whole entire childhood, just a complete, but then they have a job or they're married and they have kids and they're taking care of their kids. And it's like, yeah, that's a positive. I cannot imagine having that kind of weight on me because number one, I have intrusive thoughts already. So I would be thinking 24/7 about it growing up,
Right.
And if you can survive that and then you can have somewhat of a normal life, that's a huge accomplishment.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Because you could never, I was waiting to how you were going to frame that. And I was like,
yeah, it's like,
how's he gonna, what positives are we taking? What positive? But yeah, you can continue a normal life. And that's a huge, like, I'm sure there's some people that just got shut down. And there's some people that before they were able to get the help, like whether it be hypnosis, psychiatrist, psychologist, therapy, before that, they can't live with it. And it's so painful that they can't survive it. So there's, like kind of like a mixed bag where like, how do we get to these people first before they can survive it? And
exactly. Well, and then you could take, you could even say, hey, what can I learn from that? Well, that probably happened because the parents weren't there or something. So like when you have kids, hey, pay attention to who your kids are around. Like,
right.
You basically you kind of bit that bullet for them so that your kids don't have to experience. So now, hey, even the guy next door, the uncle, the person that you trust the most, whoever, those people could potentially be predators. So as a parent now, you start to realize, oh, okay, this guy, I don't know, he's giving me a little funny vibes. Definitely don't keep my kids around him. Or you teach your kids, hey, this is what I experienced. So if this ever happens, and then so those are all positive things you could take from that. Obviously, we don't want that to happen to anybody, but if it does, we have to look at it because if not, it'll always be unresolved. It'll always bother people. It'll always be lingering. So yeah, it's just like, you hear the cliche term, like you either win or you lose, right? And fighting and all this stuff. But it's true. If a person holds on to a loss and they don't go back and go, okay, what can I learn from this? Like seriously though, not just like, hey, like really you have to look at it like, okay, what positive did I learn? Well, I mean, this happened. Okay, what can I change? And so what this taught me, maybe not to let my left hand drop next time so that I don't get knocked out. So I need to keep that left hand up so I can protect myself, whatever. And then once people can take all the learnings from it for real, not just say that, then it's like, they can literally think about it and just like, yeah, whatever, I don't even care if that happened. And so what,
Yeah. And I think that was going to be a segue just to speak on the rape. It's like, if there aren't strong, intelligent people that want to do it, then we can't fix it. Like if we don't have people with experience that actually this has happened to them and they're going to make a difference in it, then it goes, like you said, it goes unanswered and it can never be fixed for the future, for people in the future. So it's
Right.
important. Yeah. And then my question, so it's a weird segue, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'll take up more of your time later. But
Sure.
so we're a martial arts podcast, jiu-jitsu more, but how what are the number one factors you see with champions and then people that are so close to being champions and then people that are not even that range, but all have somewhat similar skill levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would say Conor McGregor's got something about him that when he walks out there, he believes in himself so much that he does so well in first rounds. Is that it's just a completely different human. You know, it's like it's almost like the crowd the energy that sucks a lot of things away from other people. You know, it takes like I don't know if you can without talking to them say like, okay, I think Cowboy was caught in the moment. Main event, Conor McGregor. That's not how Cowboy usually looks, but Conor's such a fast starter, and he's so confident. He walks out there. There has to be somebody that he's working with constantly, because no human being is that confident when they walk out there. There's a whole lot of doubt when you're competing. But people with similar skill sets to him don't do as well as he does. They don't rise to the occasion like he does. So what is the number? Like, so if you had to take three people with three different skill sets: the champions, the contenders, and the people that should be contenders, but something's holding them back.
So without even talking to him, this is what I would just guess what that person is doing. And I've heard like Conor McGregor interviews, and he talks a lot about visualization, and you hear about visualization all the time, but this is what happens at the subconscious level. And this is one thing that I teach. Like I got a guy right now I'm working with, he's going to be competing with the Mexican Olympic wrestling team. Another guy who's a BMX guy, got another guy, he's a pro golfer. And one of the main things I tell them is, look, you have to visualize yourself doing the act, because what it does is, you remember, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's going on in your head, right? So by rehearsing a move or a situation or whatever, your subconscious literally thinks that's actually happening to you in the moment. So by rehearsing that over and over and over, by the time you get to the real situation, you've already done it, whatever, tens or hundreds or thousands of times, that it's just like any other day at the office, right? But if you get somebody who goes in and they don't rehearse it and they don't visualize themselves in the crowd and seeing everything that they're doing, seeing how they want the fight to play out, when they go out there, they're going to get that sort of shock, like, oh shit, you know, I'm here, this is what it is. And you can, so think about this. Let's take somebody who has 40 fights and they never do any visualization. They've only been in that situation 40 times in their life, right? At least in the big stage and everything else. Now let's take a guy who has 10 fights, but he's visualized it each fight 100 times before each fight. He's been in that situation with the crowd and everything else 1,000 times. So that guy can go in, be brand new, be a first, you see guys all the time, their first fight in the UFC, they go out and they just murder somebody. And it's like, holy shit, you came out against a veteran, blah, 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 blah. So that's what I would think. And I think what it is some people unconsciously do it, so they don't realize that they're doing it. It's just part of their behavior because of something they learned or whatever. And I think there's other people who purposely put a conscious effort into, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to visualize my outcome of what I want every single day or however often, so that when they're in that situation, they're able to perform. So that would be, so there's that. And then there's also going back to, remember, all the events that lead up to, all the events are out. So think of it like this. When it comes to your emotions and your beliefs, think of your emotions like a cup, right? When you're born, that cup is pretty empty. But as you go throughout life, let's take fear, for example. Let's say you're 2 years old. Your dad yelled at you. He was really pissed, and that scared the shit out of you. So now you pour a little fear in that cup. So that cup fills up just a little bit, right? Then when you're 3 years old, you fall off your bike and you hurt yourself, and that causes a bunch of fear. So then that cup gets a little bit fuller. Then you're 5 years old, something happens. Then you're 7 years old. You go to wrestle as a 7-year-old, and a guy pins you, and that cup gets filled up more. And then eventually what happens is that cup gets so full that any small event will cause you to overflow with those emotions. And so what happens is, because we're never taught how to empty out that cup, people just, depression, all it is having a full cup of sadness or depressed moments, to where it's kind of like driving on the freeway. Your emotions, your anger is like at like a 7 or 8, because you're in such a dangerous, even though we're used to it and everything, you're in such a dangerous situation driving a 3,000 pound, 4,000 pound piece of metal 80 miles down the freeway, that when somebody cuts you off, you immediately explode, right? It's because
Right.
your emotions are so high in that moment. So when people are walking around with a lot of unresolved issues from their past, any little event, somebody who has depression, they could be perfectly fine, and in a moment's notice, just like that, they see a text message, they watch a movie or whatever, and now they're completely overtaken by the feelings of depression. So it's the same thing with like people and their beliefs, people believing like they're not good enough, they don't deserve success, they can't perform under pressure. All these things are beliefs that when they get to that moment start to flood in, and then that causes them to be able to not be able to perform at their best. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is that how do you empty that cup? How do you allow
Yeah.
that cup to?
So what you have to do is you have to identify, well, first of all, you have to get your subconscious mind to agree to let it go, because sometimes, believe it or not, your subconscious, let's take, for example, the feelings that somebody isn't good enough. Now, people at the highest level and just normal people every day like myself, everybody has that belief to some degree. Now, you could take somebody who's in the UFC who's really good, but maybe they don't believe they're good enough to be a champion. Well, to somebody else who's just a normal everyday amateur fighter might look at that guy like, oh my God, that guy has everything figured out. There's nothing wrong. But at his level, there's still that belief, right? So
Right.
what you have to do, so when it comes to not being good enough, sometimes people will hold on to that belief because they know that if they felt like they were good enough, they would start to do things and put themselves out there with the potential to fail. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because they go, oh, I'm good enough to say take a fight or something, right? If they realize that, now they're putting themselves in the situation where they have to take a fight and they could potentially lose and get embarrassed, everything else. So what will happen is sometimes your subconscious will want to hold on to that belief because it thinks that it's protecting you. So first thing you have to do is go through, get it to understand like, hey, this is actually not serving me. This is hurting me more than it's helping me. And to get your subconscious to be 100% on board with letting it go. Then you have to basically go back, communicate with your unconscious mind to figure out what is the root cause of this certain belief or emotion. And some things, I don't know if you're familiar with epigenetics, but epigenetics is a study of our genes. And what epigenetics proves is that memories are passed down through our DNA as a survival mechanism. So, one way they prove this, they take these lab mice and they put them in these cages and they shock the lab mice, they put them in these cages, they spray this orange citrus smell, it's a distinct smell, and they shock the lab mice. Right after they shock the lab mice, not right after, but they take the lab mice, they breed them. When the mice have babies, they separate the parents from the babies so they can't communicate. And then when the babies are of a certain age, they spray that same orange citrus smell, and then the babies start freaking out, right? And that's because the being shocked was so traumatic for the parents that their DNA said, look, in order for us to survive and to replicate in our genes to keep going, we have to know that the next time we smell this particular smell, that there's a threat. So sometimes, believe it or not, the beliefs that we have, the depression, the alcoholism, the not good enough, the I don't deserve success, the fear of failure, all these different things can actually happen before our birth, like our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. It could happen during our birth while our mother was pregnant with us, or it can happen after our birth. If it's after our birth, it would be between the ages of 0 to 7 years old. Those are those are formidable years when kids are highly suggestible. They're just learning. So you have to identify, okay, where did this start? And then you have to look at it from a third person view and say, okay, what did I learn from this event? What positive things did I learn from this event that will allow me to let go of this belief? And then you have to let go of that belief, and then any other subsequent events after that throughout your lifetime that strengthen that belief. And then when you do that, you empty out the cup. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never come across a situation that could cause you to feel like you're good enough. It just means that when you get in those same situations, now you take all the learnings and you'll be able to move forward in your life and keep progressing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think since it's a martial arts podcast, but it's jiu-jitsu more. I find that so white belts and blue belts will compete a lot. The moment they get a purple belt that says, "Hey, I'm good at this," because I think a purple belt means, "Hey, you're good at jiu-jitsu." Blue belt means like, "Hey, you've been in it for a while, you know some stuff." Purple is like, "Hey, you're putting all this stuff together," and then you see them stop competing. Like that fear immediately hits them that they don't want to look bad at the level that they're at, and I think it goes perfectly with what you're saying is that, yeah, they're putting out they can't empty the jar of failure. They can't move forward.
The fear. Yeah, and then what'll happen is their fear gets so high that it'll just cause them not to act and not to do the things they want to do. There's also something called away from motivation and towards motivation. So when it comes to people like the blue belt blues, right? I mean, I'm just gonna speculate this is why that happened. Okay, so away from motivation means you're motivated to get away from pain. Okay, so in other words, let's say if you're broke. Well, what's your motivation to make money? You don't want to be broke. You don't want to be in debt. You don't want to be stressed out about money. So we've all probably been there before. I know I have, where you're super broke. So what happens? You're fucking motivated as hell, right? You'll go out, you'll work 12-hour days. You'll work 7 days a week. You'll do everything you need to do to get away from that pain of being broke. Now, what happens if all you're focused on is getting away from the pain of being broke? As soon as you're not broke, what happens? What happens to your motivation?
Goes down.
You go all the way back down. So what will we do? We'll take off days of work. We'll leave early. We'll call in sick. We'll spend our money on stupid things we know we don't need. And we will self-sabotage ourselves to get to the point where we're broke again. And then we're highly motivated. We'll move mountains and everything. So there's away from motivation. We're motivated to get away from pain. Then there's another motivating factor, which is you're motivated towards pleasure. If you're motivated towards pleasure, that means in regards to money, that means that you're motivated because you want financial freedom, you want abundance, you want to be able to travel, you want to buy a home, you want all these things you want. It's motivated towards what you want, not what you want to get away from. So inherently, people have some of both. Some people might be highly away from motive. Let's take a guy who's really, really in good shape, but he's broke as hell. Without even talking to him, I go, oh, he's highly away from motivated when it comes to money, but he's highly towards motivated when it comes to working out. So when it comes to working out, somebody can be motivated like, hey, I don't want to be fat. I don't want to be skinny. I don't want to be weak. I don't want to have bad cardio. I don't want to be unhealthy. Well, what happens with those people when they're highly away from? They get to where they're not fat. Boom, they start eating like shit again. They get to where they're not fat. So the guy who's in shape, he's motivated because he wants to be strong. He wants to be in shape. He wants good cardio. He wants abs. He wants all these things to where he's always consistently working out because he's highly towards motivated. So the blue belt blues, this is what I just speculate without even talking to anybody, is a lot of people get into martial arts because they're highly away from motivated, right? Why do people join? What's some reasons people join martial arts?
Confidence, friends. Oh, well.
You're towards motivated. You see that?
Yeah,
what was your first thing?
Yeah.
You said confidence, friends. Those are towards. That's why you're a black belt.
Right.
Because you're highly towards motivated in the context of martial arts. But a lot of people get into martial arts because they don't want to be weak. They don't want to be bullied. They want to be able to defend themselves, which is, it is in a way from, because you're defending yourself from something happening. So what happens is, again, this is what I'm just thinking what happens. They get into it. They're highly away from motivated. I don't want to be picked on. I don't want to be disrespected. I don't want to be bullied. And again, we all have a little bit of both. Some people might be like, hey, I want to have friends. I want to be confident, but at the same time, I don't want to be bullied. So there could be a little bit of both. So I think what happens is when those people get to blue belt, they feel like, hey, I can't be bullied anymore. Nobody's disrespecting me now. Nobody's picking on me, all this stuff. So then what happens to their motivation? Well, they lose it, right? And then what probably happens is maybe they get, let's say if that same guy got into a street altercation and he got his ass whooped, I bet your ass he'd be back in the gym, wouldn't he?
Right.
He'd be like, fuck, I don't want that to happen again. I'm a blue belt. I thought I had it all figured out. Now he's motivated so he doesn't get his ass whooped. So people like yourself who are like, well, I do jiu-jitsu because it keeps me healthy. I can, it helps me be offensive when it comes to if you need to in the situation to protect yourself, friends, all the stuff. So you'll stay in it long term because there's always something to move towards. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what's funny is that I always tell people why I'm good at jiu-jitsu is because of my fear. I'm afraid of people passing me. Right. So I had 3 surgeries on my spine, knee surgeries. My fear was always that people can catch up to me if I stop working. So I'll do hours and hours of study. I'll do hours and hours of, I'll teach every single class that I have to teach because I don't want anybody being better than me ever.
Right.
In what I chose to be the best at. And that constant fear of so there'll be like times where of course I lose motivation, but then I think, what is somebody else doing? Who is somebody else working harder than I am right now? If they're working harder than I am, they have the capability of surpassing me. And so there's always that kind of that race that I'm in for. And watching the Michael
Does it
Jordan,
feel like kind of like this?
Yes,
like you'll be highly motivated and then and then highly motivated. Yeah. So again, that's the fear of people passing you up. Everything else you'll get when you feel like, hey, I'm not being passed up. I feel like I'm fine. I'm good. And then what has to happen in order for you to get really motivated again? Something has to happen, right?
Right.
Injury. You haven't trained for 3 months. Holy shit. Or some guy taps you that shouldn't tap you.
Right.
You get a purple belt or brown belt that taps you, like, holy shit. Now you're like fucking motivated. Right. So that's why I think the whole blue belt blues thing is, I think a lot of those people, when they get into it, their motivation is just to not be bullied, not have all that stuff happen. They get to that point. Blue belt means like, I can do this. And then they lose it. And again, people have both. So like you said, you have the fear of all those things, but then also you have the towards, which is friends, all the things you talked about. So once you can get rid of the away from motivation, then instead of your motivation being like this, up and down, it'll just be a constant flow of motivation. So those people, instead of them focusing on, I want to be bullied, I don't want this, I don't want that, if they can shift their focus, like, okay, why am I doing jiu-jitsu? So I can have friends, confidence, be in shape for a long time, have respect for my peers who are at the black belt level. Those people will stay doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, or any sport for that matter, or whatever it is.
There was so The Last Dance is on ESPN. It goes over the Bulls, but more so it goes over Michael Jordan. That's basically the Bulls rotate around him, right? So and continuously you see him just talking about where he needs to be and why he retired. It was like where he needed to be considered among Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. So he had to win a championship, and he had to win it twice. And then when he got to 3, he retired and then came back later. But it was like one of those things where it's like, was he afraid of diminishing his skills? Was he, like he came back, he made a huge comeback, but that constant, I have to be as good as everybody thinks I am, right? Everybody thinks that Larry Bird and Magic Johnson are the best players of all time. How am I ever going to get my name mentioned among those guys? So would you say his is goal-based or fear-based?
It sounds like his are goal-based, but a lot of times what happens is people reach a certain goal and they're sat and they're just kind of like, okay, good, I made it. And then they lose the motivation. So you have to restructure, reanalyze, okay, I did this, what is next? And what probably happened was he got to that 3 mark and didn't really necessarily reanalyze it. And then he stepped out for a little while, had some of that away from motivation kick in, but then also reanalyze, like, hey, you know what? I'm at 3 now. I'm still healthy. I'm still young. I can actually do 6. And then he just basically, it's kind of like this, right? I'm running towards, so let's say there's $1 million, whatever, 10 miles away. If I get to that $1 million and there's not another $1 million, I might just stop there and that's it. I'm just my motivation. So if there's another $1 million, there's another prize, I'm going to keep going to the next one and keep going to the next one. But what most people do is when they're running in a certain direction is they're running from a lion, right? So they're running, they're trying to get away from the lion. As soon as they get away from the lion, the lion starts catching up, and then they keep running, and then they just keep running away from all the things that they don't want. So I would say that he was towards both. Again, everybody has a little bit of both. He probably had some away from, mostly towards, but where he got to where he didn't like set the bar to the next level, and he got bored, and then it took a little bit of time off to reevaluate and then stretch it out even further.
How would you suggest so this sounds maybe corny, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but it almost sounds like a goal list. Like, okay, you have to write what you want to accomplish, and you have to stay. So things are going to change, of course, in that list. You're never always going to want to be the best jiu-jitsu. You may change jiu-jitsu, but you want to have financial stability. You want to have a lake house. You want to one day, like when you retire, you don't want to have to worry about money. And so these are all things you can put in your list, but you have to have a shorter list in the beginning to get all the way so you can get to that end goal. So it's basically just not a bucket list, but a goals list. And is that what you're saying? Like more of, so you list out the things that you're towards the pleasure, towards the reward, towards this. And so that when you get to that spot, you kind of wipe everything away. You go, okay, what's my next goal? And that's what I think what champions do is that they immediately are not satisfied. They're satisfied. Right. They raise the trophy. It's a great night. And then they're like, okay, what's next?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing with goals, and this is why I didn't achieve a lot of the goals that I wanted for a long time, and why most people don't, is number one, lack of clarity. So we have all these different goals that we want, everything, all these different areas of our life. And you can only put so much focus, you only have so many hours, so much mental capacity to focus on certain things. So if you have all these different goals, all these different things, it's going to be hard to manifest those goals. So it's going to be like a long, slow process, right? So the other thing with goals is people will usually shoot too far too soon. So for example, like a lot of fighters, guys who haven't even had a professional fighter, like, I want to be a UFC champion. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. I'm like, you and everybody else, bro. But what's your believability on a scale 1 to 10 that that's actually going to happen? Not that you can, because anybody can, technically it's possible. Right. But I'm talking about like you bet your mom's life, your daughter's life, anybody, you would bet that that's going to happen. What's your believability 1 through 10? They'll go, oh, like a 2.
1.
1.
Like you start putting my family at risk, and it's like, I want to stay safe.
Yeah, I don't want to be a UFC champion. Yeah. Not that it's not going to happen, but this is what most people do is they focus on something that's so unattainable at that moment that it causes them stress. And if you're feeling stressed out about a goal, your subconscious mind is thinking, oh, this is a threat. Stay away from this UFC champion thing, because every time we think about it, it causes us stress. So it's kind of like this. If I told you to build a house, have you ever built a house before?
No, of course not.
Okay, cool. So if I said, hey, Malachi, I need you to build this house.
Right.
Your immediate thought is going to go, there's no fucking way I could build a house. How the fuck can I build a house? It's like, that's nearly impossible. Right. I mean, I'm sure you can figure out, but at first you're going to go, nah, this is too complicated. I can't do it. Right. So that's the UFC dream. I want to build a house. But if I said, okay, Malachi, actually what I want you to do, forget about building a house. Fuck the house. I don't even care about the house. All I want you to do is take this piece of land right here. I want you to level it out. Do you think that you could figure that out, like to level out some dirt and make it flat? You could probably
at some point it'd be a lot of frustration, but I'm sure I could get there.
But like if I gave you the tools, you could figure it out. Right. But I said, hey, here's where the pipes need to go for the plumbing and electrical. This is the exact outline of how it needs to go. All I need you to do, I need you to dig 1 foot by 3 foot holes. Do you think you could figure that out and just do it in the exact same? Of course you could, right? Then I said, hey, Malachi, here's the pipes. Here's the pipes I need you. This one needs to go here. This one needs to go here. Do you think you could figure out how to lay the pipe?
Right.
Of course you could. And then I go, okay, Malachi, now I need you to figure out how to lay the foundation. Well, it might be confusing at first, but you think about it, all I'm doing is I'm putting concrete in an area and making it flat. I mean, it can't be that hard. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so eventually now we make the frames, and then eventually step by step by step, eventually you're going to have a house built. But if you focus on building the house, you'll never fucking build the house. So what you have to do is just focus on the first step, which is lay the foundation. And because if I said, hey, what's your believability you could lay the foundation, 1 through 10, what's your believability?
Man, I'm terrible at anything. My wife does everything.
I'm sorry. What's your believability that you could flatten a piece of land? If I said, here's the tractor to do it, figure it out. What's your believability that you could do that?
So
just flatten it out.
Listen, I'm a different soul. And I would be lying if I said if flattening something out would take me probably 10 years to learn. I'm as bad.
Okay.
A normal person should be 8.
This is a great example. So now let's take that piece of land instead of this big ass, you're probably thinking it's an acre. Mm-hmm. What if I told you need to do 50 by 50 or 20? How about a 10 by 10 piece of little square of dirt, and it was all fucked up? You could do that, right?
Right.
So now I get you started there. Okay. Now we take the 10 by 10, we just go a little bit further, and then you go, fuck, I got the hang of this. Actually, it's easy. And before you know it, now we got the whole piece of land flat, right? But so what's your believability you could do the 10 by 10?
Well, now I'm at a 10. Now I think
you got a 10.
If I start with that 10 by 10 and I can slowly get the hang of it, yeah, you're right.
And then before you know it, now you're doing the whole piece of land. So when you feel good and you know you could do something and there's some excitement behind it, people will act on those goals. But when it's too far out, it creates stress. We will self-sabotage. Our subconscious mind will self-sabotage us to keep us as far away from those goals as possible. So when it comes to goals, just literally a couple of things, write everything down, write down what's most important, go, okay, 1 through 10. If anything's below an 8 or a 7, shuck that out for now. You can put it on the back burner, because what's going to happen is when you start to get those things that are 8, 9s, and 10s, you're going to accomplish it and go, okay, now that thing that was a 5 is now an 8. Now I focus on that. And that's the fastest way to achieve something, is just to start off small, build up on it slowly but surely.
That's awesome. Hey, Dom, man, tremendous information. Like,
thank you.
And this is pretty much what not to say what I expected, but us talking for a while, I knew that the level of that you were at, and that you were the right person to talk to. Where does somebody get a hold? So how does a UFC fighter, how does a jiu-jitsu competitor, how do they get a hold of you? How do they start? What steps do they need to take? I mean, I'm sure you have a resource.
Just find me on Instagram, shoot me a message. I mean, I get tons of messages every day, so I'm always checking my DMs. That's either that or I have a YouTube channel you can go on. But yeah, Instagram is the quickest way to get a hold of me. Go on there, send me a DM. I check all my messages. So just tell me, hey, I saw you on this or whatever, and I was thinking about working with you. Can you help me with this? And sometimes people come to me for things that I can't help them with. Like I said, the heart thing, that kind of stuff, I don't usually deal with. People come for me for just all kinds of different things, and sometimes I turn people away. I'm like, hey, I don't think I could help this person. But if it's mindset related, sports related, goals related, anxiety, depression, any of that stuff, that's my wheelhouse right there.
That's awesome. No, and speaking with you, I think that I have a clearer understanding of what I need to do for myself. It's funny, just because I'm always trying to take in information, I'm trying to figure out, how does this fix me? How does this relate to me? And it's surely it's a selfish way of thinking, but it goes, how can whatever I took from Dom today, connect that and add that to my life and be better from it? How am I going to? So I hope that people that are listening are connecting themselves, even if they weren't talking about the back, even if we weren't talking about jiu-jitsu, how they can change their mindset and become just a little bit better over time. Like if they want to build a house, or if they want to obtain a goal, all these things are obtainable. It's our subconscious pulling us away. And I think that's the main thing I'm taking from this, is that our subconscious pulls us away from failure and fear and injury. And sometimes that's not the right answer. Sometimes the answer is checking in on that in the past and going, oh, we're okay in this situation. You can move forward.
Exactly. I'll leave you with one more thing. So this is one thing that I hear coaches do all the time, and just people in general. And I'm not going to tell you what it is until after, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to have you do this quick little exercise. So what I want you to do is take your hands, just place them out like this. And then I want you to clasp them together, bring it up to your chin. And then I want you to open up your index fingers, not cross like this, but completely open them up. Yeah, open them up a little bit more.
So this one doesn't work.
Oh, okay. So open them up as far as you can.
Okay.
Is that as far as they'll go?
Yeah, listen, this finger doesn't point.
Oh, shit. Okay. So do you have feeling in that finger?
Yeah, I do.
There you go. Open them up as far as you can. Perfect. And I want you to stare at the space, even though it's a little space in between your index fingers. And I want you to pretend or imagine you got two of the most powerful magnets in the world attached to each fingertip. And as you sit there and listen to my voice, those fingers are going to be in twitch. As they twitch, they're going to move closer. When they touch, go ahead and close your eyes and go all the way down, all the way down. That's right. Now, as you sit there and listen to my voice, you're going to notice those fingers are getting tighter and tighter. They're getting closer and closer. They're getting stuck together, because remember, these are the two most powerful magnets in the world. And that's what magnets do. Magnets get stuck together. Now, not yet, but in a moment, I want you to open your eyes. And when you open your eyes, you're going to stare directly at your fingertips. So go ahead and open your eyes. And as you open your eyes and as you stare at your fingers, you're going to notice those fingers are completely stuck together. As a matter of fact, they're so stuck together. In a moment, I want you to try and separate them. But I only want you to try and separate them when you are certain you will not be able to. So go ahead and try and separate them, and you may find that you cannot. And the harder you try to separate them, the more they get stuck together, and you can try, but those fingers want to stay stuck together. Now go ahead and separate your fingers and separate your hands. There you go. All right, what's today's date?
The 21st, 19.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I had no idea. 5/19. There we go.
How was that experience?
Well, I forgot what day it was, and I forgot the month and everything else. That was interesting.
When you had your fingers?
It felt good. Like, that's the weird thing, is that it felt like they should be together. You know, like, and then removing them was almost laborious, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here, do you know why that worked?
Why?
So if you go and play this back, you'll hear I used one specific word that kept those fingers close together and kept them kind of stuck. I used the word try. So I said, I want you to try and separate them, but I only want you to try and separate them. So the word try in hypnosis, we use it to paralyze people, which is what we call a convincer. So in other words, if I wanted somebody to be like, holy shit, this is working, and I wanted, let's say I was doing stage hypnosis or something, and somebody's sitting in a chair, and I go, try to stand up. Well, if I say try to stand up, I'm not actually telling you to stand up, right? I'm saying try to stand up. So to try to stand up would actually look like this.
Right.
Right? So and so if you listen back, I say try to do it, and they're kind of separating, but they feel like they want to stay stuck, right? And then as soon as I said separate your fingers, separate your hands, you went boom. Yeah. Just right away, it's like separate them. Okay, boom.
Right.
So what's happening is at the subconscious level, I'm saying the word try, which it means basically to not do it.
Right.
And then once I give you the command to just do it, then you do it. So coaches do this all the time. And I used to do it all the time before I became a hypnotist and realized what the word does is they'll be teaching a move, right? And and just because it's what we learn, it's not like we're doing anything. It's not like it's really, really like, I don't think you're doing anything wrong necessarily, but it could just be done better. Right. Is what do we say? Okay, what you want to do is you want to try to put your hand here. You want to try, then you want to try to hook the head here. Then you want to attempt a takedown. So what are all those words? What are you doing when you're saying all that?
There's an overlaying premise that you will not be able to do it, possibly.
Exactly. It's like, okay, try. But if they say, hey, grab the head, grab the arm, shoot the takedown.
Right.
Do you feel the difference in the commands that you're giving somebody? So it's no longer kind of like I'm kind of doing this, kind of not. So when you use the proper language and you're saying, hey, do this, do this, do this. When people are actually doing it, that little hesitation will be gone because you as the coach are giving them a direct command. Hey, grab here, do this. Because you don't want it. Do you want to attempt a takedown?
No, you want to take down.
No, you want takedown. So just take down.
Yeah.
So once we remove the word try, attempt, all that stuff, that alone will help us get our point across quicker, and it'll help the students be able to implement in their brain instead of having that sort of hesitation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Especially for kids. You know, I think as an adult, and I can't really ever say that I'm the person that says try. I'm one of those.
No, you might not. Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's why I'm a little bit happy because I'm not because I'm thinking. I go, okay, when I tell somebody to do something, I expect for them to do it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. So you, without realizing, maybe you did know, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But sometimes people just do it and they're just talking. They don't realize it. And then sometimes people just say, hey, grab here, grab here, grab here, grab here. And you can physically feel the difference when you give a command like that. There's no like, try is like, it might happen, it might not. Fucking do it is like, all right, we're doing this shit. You know what I mean?
The same thing with corner. When I'm in the corner and I have 1 minute to talk to my fighter, I don't have the time to use words like try or I need you to attempt. It's like, we need to get up. We need to get, as soon as our butt touches the ground, we need to get back up. You need to get your bottom leg underneath yourself and get back up. We cannot afford to lose this fight on the ground. You know, and so it's like the direct commands and the direct consequences that come up. We cannot give this fight to the ground. If it happens to the ground, so there's probably another problem I'm making is going that once their butt stays on the ground, they feel like they're going to lose. Well, now I've lost, so I'm already here. Where I'm sure there's more words of.
Well, one thing you could do. This is another huge thing is, a lot of time we're programmed to talk about what we don't want. And so if I say, don't think of the color black, don't look at the color black, don't notice the color black, don't pay attention to the color black, what happens to the color black?
Becomes my only thing I'm focused on.
It's just like, boom, right? So if I say, all right, don't go to the ground, don't go to the ground, what are the pictures actually going in your head?
Being on the ground.
Going to the ground, right? So you have to process that picture and then you have to process what you want. Whereas where you don't want to not go to the ground, what do you actually want to do?
Stay standing.
Exactly. So by literally saying, so instead of like, and I'm not an MMA coach, I'm not claiming to know anything about MMA, but when I listen to people's language, I understand the pictures that they're instilling in people's minds. So don't go back against the cage. Well, you don't want to not put your back against the cage. You want to keep the fight in the center, right? Or like you said, don't go to the ground. No, let's keep the fight standing. So what happens in that split second, the picture of them keeping the fight standing will pop into their head. And so our thoughts, so words will create pictures. That's how our subconscious mind processes everything. You get a picture, that picture creates a feeling, that feeling creates an action. So if I keep saying, don't go to the ground, don't go to the ground, I'm thinking of going to the ground, which is going to make me do things to end up in that position. So if I say, keep the fight standing, and you can even feel it, like you can feel the difference between don't go to the ground and keep the fight standing. Like you can feel it in your body, like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep the fight standing. You know what I'm saying? Or don't get hit. You don't want to not get hit. You want to make your opponent miss, right?
I think I'm about to teach a kids class, but I think this is another podcast. I think we're using words that are going to have better actions can help so many different coaches, because we're going in there and so the fighters have to understand, we've sat on the outside of the corner for 5 minutes. We've watched everything happen that we didn't need to have happen, or everything that we need to keep happening. So we're going in there, and sometimes you get the coaches that are like, okay, breathe. And I call those like, the guys that give you hugs. It's like, it's like,
you're like, we already know that, right?
Yeah. Like you need to breathe, count down from 10, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, that should have been already done in training. You should already have that in your thought process of how you're cooling down. I got 1 minute of pit time to tell you exactly what I need to have done. Now I need to convey it to you in the best possible manner, in a positive way. If you're losing the fight, I'm not going to lie to you and say that you're winning the fight. But what I need to do is I need you to react, and I only have 1 minute. So as a corner rushing in, I probably F up a good bit of it.
It's like, sure, yeah.
And
especially when you're rushed and you're feeling like you're in, you're right there. I mean, that's a lot of stress,
right. So you have
watching
to
your
change
friend,
yeah.
your fighter get beat up or something. It's like,
Yeah. And then you just want to go in there and help them so much, but you don't realize the exact wording that person needs to excel in that one moment, that fight, nothing
right.
else. They don't ever have to keep it standing ever again. But right now, you need to keep it standing.
Yep,
And
exactly. Yep.
I think that's, that's some really deep dive stuff to talk about what words are better to use, what can we possibly take from, because there's trigger words. There's also how you sell things. There's like, this is funny. It's like, I read like how to turn phrases differently. So when I'm going over different prices, most people choose this. And then their mind goes, I'm most people.
Yeah.
And
like,
they choose, yeah. And so it's like,
what do they call that? Social proof or something like that, or not social proof. I'm thinking of something else. I know what you're talking about though. Yeah.
right. It's like the good news.
The little words.
Yeah. That
like take something down that path.
Right. So it's like saying like, we do not do this, but instead of saying, but you say the good news is, and then you rephrase it to a positive. And those are things that are very difficult to do if you're not a salesman. And this is not I sell my jiu-jitsu basically off of how my results and how people feel in the class. And if they don't ever take my class, then they don't know why I'm offering my prices the way they are. But once you're with somebody, you're like, hey, I don't know what I want to buy. You have to actually pull out the thing, point it out, and almost guide them to the decision of what you think they're telling you they want. Because otherwise, if you just give them a packet of different prices, they're like, this is a lot of stuff. I could do this. What is that? Okay, and some people may be like that, but most people aren't. They want to be told, they want to be
directed to the right answer.
And I want to show you,
they're coming to you.
Right, exactly. And here I am. A lot of times I was giving them, okay, here's 8 plans you can choose from.
Oh,
they're like,
too many.
8 plans. It's like, well, now I'm convincing. It's like, what are your goals? Okay, then I go with these 2. It's like, how often do you want to be training? Okay, now we're up here. And then I'm going to say, well, out of these 2, this is more most people would choose if they were you.
Right.
And they're like, okay, that's what I'll start with. I'd say you can always start with the lower price and move yourself up if you like.
And then they feel like you're not like trying to upsell them, like, okay, I'll do that. And then, whatever.
Yeah. And on their own, when they're not getting enough, because I put them in the lower tier, they move themselves up without me selling it to them.
Right. Because if you try to do them on the higher tier, they might not do it at all. And then
right.
They don't get any benefit from that.
That's really where I've seen a difference in just that one word of saying most people. And, and like I should reread the book because there's a bunch of them, but there's these things, and I'm working with some really brilliant coaches. I think what you're talking about is something that could boost the level of cornering, coaching, are these words that you want to use in order to produce the best results, not just for yourself, but for your team.
Right. And then imagine if you're using those words the whole fight camp, not just in the cage, but leading up, the 3 months leading up, you're telling them, hey, keep it standing. Hey, keep it in the middle. Hey, then it's like, I remember this one time specifically, like when I first started doing hypnosis and we were training and we were in class and everybody circles up and we go, we do one-on-one competing, whatever you want to call it. And I remember with this one guy, tapped or whatever, and I was pretty fucking tired. And then this other guy came up and, we start wrestling and everything. And I was tired. And I remember hearing, like not his corner, but like his buddy saying, he's getting tired. And literally those words, I physically felt my body get even more tired. I felt it, like the words. And I remember a guy that was kind of on my side, like trying to help me out. He's like, don't get tired, Dom, don't get tired. And literally my gas tank just went to 0. And I remember watching, what's his name? Chris, I forget his last name. He trains at our gym. He fights in PFL. And I remember watching him fight and I heard his corner yelling out, you're not tired. You're not tired. And you literally see him go, yeah, like, And then for a second, and he kind of pops out of it. And I remember talking to him after. I was like, "Hey, do you remember when so-and-so said, don't get tired?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, I could tell in that moment you got tired. And he's like, "Yeah, I did. I physically felt my body." And it's because you're processing tired, as opposed to, "Hey, dig deep. You got energy. Dig in that guy," whatever you want them to do instead. So yeah, man, language is fucking huge.
I remember there's being 2 situations, one of my own where I was so exhausted after the first round because I just had an adrenaline dump. And I look over and my opponent's head is down and he's exhausted too. And I stood up and I walked to the middle of the ring. That's it. I just stood and waited. The referee had to push me back 3 times to start from a neutral position, right? Before he started the fight. And he told me at the end of the fight, he goes, "Man, that broke my will." He's like, the moment you stood up and you were waiting for the rest, like, so maybe about 15 seconds into the round, I stand up and I walked. It took everything in my body to do it because I was really gassed. And he goes, "It just broke everything I thought of." It's like I wasn't ready to fight somebody who was ready to go like that. And like he shied away from me. And
why you probably did that is because he had his head down, which that gave you energy, right? You're like, "Oh shit, and predator, time to attack."
Yeah, and for my coaching, so if I see somebody, like even if we lost the fight, I'll point at the opposite corner and they probably think I'm a real jerk. But I'm like, "Look at him. Look at him. He's done. He's done. Look at him." I'm always pointing. And my fighters just know this is the time to stand up. Because we use that kind of mental psychology of going, okay, it's time for me to stand up. It's time for me to let this guy know it's over for him. You had your round,
instead of waiting for that second.
And then the pointing, I don't know why, man, it just works. Just pointing, and even if they can't even hear me, I'm just pointing. We're just looking at him, and you just see this guy just
imagine, being that guy getting pointed at. He's probably feeling like, "Oh shit!" Like, I would feel like that, like I'm being attacked without even being attacked, but I feel like they're just all this fucking.
Everything's
totally
on me.
See how that works. Yeah, it's like they're like, and it's like almost like you're gonna fucking kill this guy, and he's just looking at it like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, and you see the fighter
I like that
getting up, their chest coming up, and they're deep breath, and that guy's still on the chair, and you're still pointing. And it's like, man, that was the one thing I found as a corner works really well is pointing at the opposite fighter and just pointing, and just telling them like, he's done. There's no more. There's nothing left. We're gonna end it this round, and usually it ends in that round. Even if we took the ass kicking in the first round, we're right back in the second. And we usually win this. If we don't finish it, we usually win that second, third,
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, body language is huge, man. That's I like that. That's smart.
So the corner should walk in with big chests and everything else. If
the corner's all defeated, then fucking your fighter's going to be defeated. They're going to see that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
all right.
smart.
We have got to do this again, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
So my next goal with the next podcast with you would be to go over some words that are better words to use, different ideas, different visualization processes, different things to kind of create this almost armor. So we have our fighter and they're already great, but they need armor. And I would think that the mindset itself would be the armor that's protecting the already skilled body.
Right. Yeah, let's do it, man.
Awesome.
Next time try this. Next time you get somebody really tired, tell them don't get tired, and watch their energy sap. And then next time, and then same person, tell them encouraging words of what you want, and watch their completely different demeanor and watch them dig deep. Man, it's crazy.
Oh, I'm gonna love it, man. This was amazing. Cool. Thank you, Dom. Check
Dom. Mike, thanks for having me on.
Dom the Hypnotist on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'll be posting some stuff about this so that they can reach you and find you, because I know that I want to get back to this. I know I want to talk more about these words that we can use and the different things that we can help for corners, because a lot of my listeners are people that are already coaches or already farther ahead in their jiu-jitsu journey. Or if they're not, they're wanting to get better, because I'm not the flashy guy. I'm here's how we build up from the ground up, So thank you so much, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
All right. Take care.
Jream, Jiu-Jitsu Rules Everything Around Me podcast.